So I'm aiming for us to continue today and finish the key consultation items and the funding requests. So can't give you an exact time that we'll finish, sorry, but that's just an indication. And we do have quite an extensive list of other items, so we'll adjourn and then come back tomorrow to continue with those. So just to go back to the Ahuriri Regional Park, and we were just finalising some wording there around the lagoon farmland. Okay, so if we can all take a moment to review what we have. Does this include the recommended changes from council officers? Yes, it does. Great.
Through the mayor, they're just outlined in pink. Council officers' changes are made in pink.
Okay.
Recreation isn't one of the... Storage capacity. Just a question there around the addition of climate change adaptation from staff. My understanding is that as a significant portion of the lagoon farmland would be for stormwater overflow capacity in the wetland, that adapts to one of our climate change issues, which is the increasing intensity and frequency of rainfall events. So it has a climate change adaptation component as an outcome to this project as well.
Councillor Bowe, yeah.
I totally approve of that, but it doesn't mention recreation, which was in the document. And I know people had huge misgivings about putting that in, on the list, but are we deliberately not putting in recreation, which I think is okay, but...
I think that's up for discussion from councillors. The reason why I didn't propose recreation as a key outcome of the park is I see recreation as a subsidiary outcome that may come once we understand better all of those habitat and ecological implications of what we're proposing. So I think, personally, I think there will be a space for passive recreation in the regional park, but I see it as more a subsidiary rather than a key outcome.
And I'd just like to make one very, very slight recommendation in terms of bullet point 3, that we actually acknowledge the role of mana whenua as kaitiaki of this area and have them at the forefront of our key partnerships and those that we are naming. So just mana whenua going before HBRC. Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, coming back to the recreational side of it, it might be best to put something in there because I think there's cycle tracks already through there. There's blow carts in there, and if anyone actually does want to go and birdwatch, that would be probably deemed a recreational activity. So rather than take one out of the whole lot, is perhaps leave it in and then work out what it's going to be rather than take the whole lot out.
I mean, through you, Madam Mayor, it's definitely up for discussion from council. I personally wouldn't support recreation being a key outcome. As I've said, I think it will be a passive outcome, but if we were to list all the outcomes we're looking at, we would have, a really big list.
And so I thought it was just important in our resolution to acknowledge, some of those serious concerns and misgivings and things that we need to work through around those ecological effects. And recreation is actually one of the biggest concerns to people who have an interest in this space. So I think if we were to list recreation as a key outcome, that would be at odds with, I think, the key outcomes we're actually trying to achieve, but completely open for discussion.
Perhaps the addition of a bullet point there around acknowledging that the appropriate recreational opportunities, which,
Will be developed
Will be-
through the master plan.
Yeah, that's good wording. Are we meeting in the middle somewhere, Councillor Brosnan, with that one?
Give you a cuddle later.
Councillor Tapine.
The phrase is in there, the bullet point's in there. The only insight I'd like to add is that the development of this concept has taken its own path to get to this point. We didn't follow the normal processes that we would normally go through, which is an open consultation, engage with stakeholders, and then move into where we are now. We have taken a cautious but careful approach to building the concept to this point around some key stakeholders. And so my comment around the recreational or conservation status of the land would be that I was hoping that the partnerships that we form in the next stage will help provide what they would expect as a community to be the key focuses and outcomes for that space. And I understood the reason why we didn't step forward in those spaces is because we hadn't engaged with our necessary groups in order to define exactly those outcomes. And so my comment is I'd prefer, while I understand Councillor McGrath's desire and perhaps even broadening the definition of recreation going into the future, whatever that might mean, I also want to make, my understanding was we wanted to build strong collaborative partnerships with key stakeholders in mana whenua in that space and enable and empower them to define its use, its outcomes, and those very points around recreation and conservation, because that was the contention I picked up through the submissions. There was some concern. And so I worry that by stipulating it at this stage, we may be inserting that element of activity before we even get to sit down and talk with the partners. That's my whakaaro. So I thought it was fine without that extra bullet point. I thought that, to make it short, I think recreation or conservation or whatever the status or objectives are that we may seek for that place will come out of that partnership.
Partnerships.
Yeah.
Councillor Bogue.
Can I just quote from the document? By developing a regional park in partnership with HBRC and mana whenua on Lagoon Farm, we want to deliver great environmental outcomes that provide for biodiversity and fantastic recreation experiences for everyone to enjoy. That's what we said. So I don't think we can take it right out. But be aware of the feedback we had and the concerns that the environmental groups had in particular of the possible damage that could do.
Yeah, through the chair, I was also concerned that if we don't leave some of it in, the environmental groups may not be allowed in there.
I think we need to leave it in. It's whether we need to talk about confirming the key regional park outcomes with.
Yeah, if we're going to get stuck on this, I did kind of to and fro over whether we put key outcomes in here, because we are endorsing the development of a vision document for the master plan, which will do that in partnership, so sort of following on from Councillor Tapine's kōrero. So if this is something that we might get stuck on in terms of defining key outcomes, we could be silent on that and leave that to the visioning process in partnership as well.
Councillor Wright.
We could change the wording to acknowledge that through consultation, appropriate recreational opportunities may be developed as part of the master plan, that then acknowledges that it is a consideration, but that consultation will determine how that comes out. So that was acknowledged through consultation that appropriate recreational opportunities may be developed as part of the master plan.
Is it developed or incorporated? Because we're not going to
Doesn't
develop.
worry me either way.
We're not going to develop them. They're going to, they're going to morph.
Incorporate, yeah, maybe incorporated.
Does that answer your concerns, Councillor Bowe?
Councillor Brown?
For the line starting support key outcomes, just reflecting on what Deputy Mayor Brosnan's just said, maybe we could propose the key outcomes or support the inclusion of.
I'm quite happy with the wording as it is. I think
Yeah.
it's a given that that's what we're trying to achieve with this particular project. And I think we need to be very clear that that is ultimately what the project is about. Okay. We're all happy with the wording. I'd like to ask someone to move. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
No one seconded.
Seconded by Councillor Brown. Did you wish to speak to that, Deputy Mayor?
I think I've spoken when I proposed the motion, and thank you for all your considered additions to the recommendation. I think we have landed on a really good pathway to move forward with all of our amazing stakeholders that we have in this space to develop something really special for Ahuriri.
Right. Councillor Brown.
Just concur with what the Deputy Mayor says, and it's exciting to be moving forward.
Right. Okay, I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Oh, did Councillor Tapani, sorry, did you want to say something? No? I saw Deputy Mayor looking at you like...
Sorry, that was my fault.
You've been gagged.
Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Well done, everyone. Okay, so moving on to housing. Use a loan to fund the $1.8 million deficit for the housing portfolio for the 21-22 financial year, noting that this is a stopgap solution only and recommendations arising out of a review of the housing portfolio are due to Council as soon as possible. Now, I'm just conscious that obviously this funding that has been proposed and we're about to vote on is only for 1 year, and I think that this recommendation needs to make it quite clear that a decision from the housing review is required before the 30th of June 2022 to actually enable us to move forward, because we're not saying we're going to loan fund for more than 1 year.
Just a clarification, Madam Mayor, because the option 1 in our book is fund the 2022 funding, 1.8 million for a loan. Shortfalls from 22-23 would be funded by subsequent loans, payments, terms.
Okay, so that
Next step. It does say that option 1 is that shortfalls from 2020-23 will be funded by subsequent loans.
okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think we had to end up funding it all in year 1. I'll just pass over to Adele for some more confirmation on that.
And just through the Mayor, so in regards to what was being presented was the shortfall for the next number of years, and knowing that was on the cards, Council needed to actually fund that gap. So for the purposes of the long-term plan, we've had to fund all the years through loans, but noting that the Council's desire is to have it, or have that review undertaken and a decision to be made around what it is going to do in the future. So for the purposes of the long-term plan, yes, it has been funded through loans, and that's why the wording has been put as such.
So I guess really what I'm trying to highlight here is this review has been going on for a significant period of time. We have residents that are feeling very vulnerable, and I want to put some timeframes around when the review is going to come to us and a decision be made.
Then we'll have to consult on it.
So just in terms of due to so we're just taking out the wording as soon as possible, essentially, and putting some timeframes around this. With a decision to be made by,
Right to the next financial year. Job done.
It's got to go out, doesn't it, for consultation? So,
so if we could have some advice around that, I don't want to leave it open-ended. I want some certainty around what our next steps are with regards to this.
Through you, Madam Mayor, would that then have an impact on our next annual plan? So does it then have to fit in with the annual plan timeframe?
With regards to if we,
Change the financial arrangement?
Through the Mayor, so that review is currently underway, and we are hoping that the actual report will be available within 3 to 4 months. But that, I think the timeframe's difficult because it has quite a few dependencies around your decisions and what the options may be and whether or not we go out for consultation. So I'm just wondering whether you wanted to put a time frame on the report being available with subsequent decision and consultation following.
yes, I could live with that.
So I think it would be safe to say December, with the report being finalised and provided.
Yeah, so arising out of a review of the housing portfolio are due to council by December 2021. Although that's still some time away if the report was due in 3 to 4 months.
It will require review after the initial.
Okay. Yeah, so if we refer to the December timeframe being around a final report, because presumably we'd have a draft report coming to us prior to that.
I nodded.
And just through the Mayor, that timing would work as far as including in any annual plan consultation as well, or having a separate consultation depending on the significance of the decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So next steps will be guided by the significance of the decisions from the final report.
May I ask a question? If we don't have everything resolved by the end of the next financial year, 2022, we won't have any money to continue the service.
No,
according
Adele
to
has
this.
just confirmed that there is ongoing loan funding to fund any ongoing gap.
Oh, cool,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Wright.
I'm just failing to understand the significance of decisions, because any decision from this review is going to be significant and would result surely in a special consultative process.
Through the Mayor, not if status quo is your decision.
Status quo would require some considerable investment. That was my understanding.
So at this stage, it's proposed to be loan funded, but yes, I mean, that could be an option.
Did anyone have any questions of council officers on this particular recommendation? In the background.
Through the Mayor, I just wanted to make one further comment. The requirement for us is to create a balanced budget longer term. So by actually funding your operating costs, we have noted that in our consultation document as a whole that we are in breach. So that's why the recommendation is to obviously go and consult as soon as possible. But for the purposes of the funding of the long-term plan, we have noted it as being loan funded.
Thank you. There's no further questions or any suggestions around the wording. I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Bogue, seconded by Councillor Wright. Did you wish to speak to that, Councillor Bogue? No. Councillor Wright?
Oh, only that it's probably everyone's wish in the room that we could move on this a lot faster, given the significance of this issue in our community currently and the level of uncertainty that's been highlighted to us today.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And we'll move on to the Faraday Centre. Keep the Faraday Centre open and provide additional funding to better support its operations until the recommendations of the detailed business case can be considered by the council in the future. Councillor Mawson.
I'm happy to move that.
I'll send it.
Did you wish to speak to that?
I think we've heard quite a few submitters, and with respect to most of them, I think there's a little bit of actual... A lot of people don't actually know what the Faraday Centre is, and even some that we heard from the last 2 days weren't actually entirely sure how it was funded and so forth. A lot of the stuff we've heard is about marketing it better and so forth, and the reality is that's why we're going out now asking for the ability to be able to look at it. So we couldn't market it because the reality is we didn't have the money to market it. So I think this is a good move to sort of give us the chance to take a look at that business case and move on that as quick as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Mawson. Councillor Wright? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And street management. Direct officers to look into an ambassadorial approach to street management further, with a view to having a new model in place and funded from 1 July 2022. Councillor Tapani.
So my question is around gateways. How, for this particular stream of activity, when will we next have a chance before July 2022 to touch base with that?
So requiring a proposed model to be brought back to council for approval prior to implementation. Premier Brosnan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question from me around how we're intending to bring together the CCTV project that we have on the cards. I find it difficult to separate that from this. So just a question around that, and then a follow-on question around making sure that we kind of future-proof ourselves in terms of the smarts that are out there in this space. I know there's a lot of emerging technology and how we intend to bring that in.
Through the Mayor, I think the idea at the moment is to really have a good look at what is required, and so there's some work going on to try and identify a sort of an approach to what is the problem we're trying to solve, and making sure that we've got that quite clear, and then building all of the component parts around CCTV, the ambassador program, perhaps how we can actually have a service that actually meets those issues. So it's kind of like an approach, rather than going to a solution, we're going through a deliberate process of really identifying what's required and then building those component pieces around that towards a full solution.
And that will, just to follow on, include a significant look at what those future-proofing technology options for us might look like.
That's right, and it also looks at, I guess, the recipients of the ambassadorial service, and tries to future-proof that as well. So to kind of make sure that we are looking at the right issues, really, with that program.
And sorry, last question, that will be what we see when it comes back through the gateway that Councillor Tapani was mentioning.
Natasha, do you want to chip in there?
Yes, through the Mayor. So both of those projects, as Richard has said, are being looked at together, and they are interdependent, as you've pointed out. So they will come back to you in terms of the service design. The actual technology will be part of the procurement process and plan, which will require some expertise in terms of looking at what's available and how that might meet our needs.
Thank you.
And I also think we just need to include in here some, a requirement around consultation and the development of the model.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we heard from youth in particular and mana whenua, their desire to be involved.
Councillor Brown, then Councillor Crown.
And just we also heard through the submissions around the potential inclusion of the Māori wardens and how that might feed into it.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can speak to that point in the spirit that at this stage Māori wardens did not feel they had the capacity, but absolutely be involved going forward for sure.
Councillor Crown, followed by Councillor Tapini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like to support the inclusion of youth and mana whenua, and perhaps even pre-consultation actually involved in the service design, so that the considerations are taken into account in the actual service design before it's brought back to us.
Thank you. Actually, the Chief Executive already made my point. I know that the Māori wardens have also approached me separately with that expression and desire, but they also recognise their capacity issues. So my question would be to our staff, are we still, or are not still, are we looking to work with the Māori wardens to identify those capacity issues and perhaps build solutions for the future?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll do a short yes and then pass over to Morihu for any detail on that.
Ka pai.
Any further detail?
Just to carry on from Steve's point there, the capacity of our Māori wardens is actually quite low, and they are a point of quite elderly now. So I've actually spoken to them. So they feel that what we require of them is quite of a high level in their capacity. So we just need to keep an eye with them and move forward with them and see what we can do.
Just through you, Madam Your Worship. So I'd love to stay appraised of your conversations with the Māori wardens, because I've had similar conversations, and so while I recognise those limitations, there are other opportunities with them that I'd love to talk with you about.
Absolutely. Through the Mayor.
Councillor Crown. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And that the model includes the inclusion of the CCTV component also? Mm-hmm.
Everyone stopped. Walk away.
Could I move it?
You want to? You want to move it? Move it.
Sorry,
wants to.
through you, Madam Mayor, just a comment from our officers that they would prefer to keep the CCTV model out of this resolution, in the sense that it has already been funded and is underway, but certainly noting the synergies with respect to what we're trying to achieve here with our street management. So potentially using the words in the development of a model, including CCTV, might be putting across, like, the project is further along than that. Can I just ask Adele if I covered that point adequately, please?
Just through the Mayor, so we do have some failing CCTV cameras, and so some of the work that's required is actually replacing those failing cameras. And if we link the two projects together, I'm just concerned that it may also delay the projects that need to happen. So by delinking it, but noting, maybe noting that, you know, it's consideration.
Absolutely work hand in hand. We would prefer to remove it, but up to the council, yeah.
The council is happy if we don't have any reference to the CCTV within this recommendation?
Was it in
No, it wasn't in the original one.
Question to staff through you, Your Worship.
It does mention.
By the time we get to the 1st of July 2022, is it likely that both those streams of work will be in a position to be considered together by council?
I think the CCTV is further along. That will be, yeah.
Yes, but the intention is that the CCTV will already be underway in terms of the project and the procurement, to then be able to be working hand in hand with the ambassador program.
We could include, just at the end of this, noting that the CCTV project currently underway will be considered in the development of the model. Richard?
Through the Mayor, just the concept here really is around the ambassadorial approach, and CCTV is a tool that, and so this is why Adele's thinking that's infrastructure that already is funded and has a program that is very likely to be used by the ambassadorial program, but it's the actual ambassadorial program that you're approving with this particular recommendation.
I think we do need to acknowledge, though, that CCTVs are going to be a significant tool within the program, and so there needs to be an acknowledgement of some level of alignment between the two.
Can I just say something about that? In the book, it says last year we set aside $500,000 to replace and modernise the city's CCTV network. We see these two activities working hand in hand to effectively respond to issues of community safety in our public places. The actual option was about the ambassador approach, but it does mention in the book that this is going to be working hand in hand with the CCTV, which was already funded last year.
Councillor Tapani.
Questions just to staff through you, Your Worship. So just to follow on, please, Richard. If the CCT program is likely to be completed prior to the street management program, where are we getting our confidence that the two will align in regards to, if the last report I received at council is that we were looking at fixed CCT cameras in fixed locations, and so the street management at this stage doesn't have a detail around it as to where that service is going to be provided in Napier. So where are we getting the confidence from that the work of the CCTV and its completed work will align with the proposed outcomes of the street management program? Because that's why I'd like to see some alignment so that we don't get misalignment.
It'll be considered in the development.
Or is that a risk?
It's up there.
Through the Mayor, the CCTV is useful to the police, to a number of other audiences, as well as it will be a good tool for the ambassadorial program. So it's not a it's not going to be kind of put together and then no one's going to have a look at this in the meantime. So do you know what I mean? So the work, there is currently CCTV, and that is going to be much better once we've done the work on the CCTV. That already has been used. This will make it hopefully be used a lot better, the ambassadorial program, but it's not the only people that are using that that tool.
So thank you. What I heard was that the CCTV program has its own merits and benefits for our community, and that the ambassadorial program is separate to that and will provide different benefits.
Through the Mayor, could I just add to that? It might just give you some assurance, Api, that, Councillor Tawhani, that both those two projects, the same staff are working on those two projects, as well as two councillor representatives. So they are straddling both of those projects, so they will be highly related.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Price.
Just to clarify that a bit more, there's three of us working on it, Sally and myself, plus a lot of staff and an independent group that have asked us lots of questions. They'll come up with a concept that will then get to council. So there's a lot of work going on bringing the paper to council.
Can't point. Thank you, Councillor Price.
Councillor Crown.
I just wanted to suggest some wording. I feel a little bit like Deputy Mayor Brosnan, but was wondering if we could have a second bullet point saying, noting that the separately funded CCTV service will likely be utilised in the model.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be a separate bullet point. I think it can just be the rewording of that sentence, that the CCTV. Can you just read out what you said? Please, Councillor?
Noting that the separately funded CCTV service will likely be utilised in the model.
Project.
Yeah. You're moving, Councillor Crown, seconding Councillor Price.
Thank you. The only additional comment that I wanted to make was one of the key stakeholders that was particularly interested in the ambassadorial project are our business associations. So we heard from Napier City Business Inc. And through the sort of initial due diligence and sort of creative visioning around what the service might look like, you know, we've had input from Ahuriri and from Taradale also. So it is a really well supported idea at this stage, and yeah, really happy to see it move forward.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what Sally said, and also on this working group we spoke to Hamilton, we run a system, we went and had a look at Hastings. So main thing is to come up with something for our city, not just copy what's done in another city, but use the tools they've got.
Okay, so I will put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And on to traffic safety plans. Increase the number of local area traffic safety plans completed per year from 1 to 3, noting that council receives a 51% contribution from Waka Kotahi towards these plans. Just a quick question from myself. I'm interested in knowing how we assess and prioritise our local area traffic safety plans.
That was going to be my question.
Keep it in it, you could answer that.
Yeah.
Read the papers.
Oh, thank goodness Robin's here.
I had a supplementary.
Through your worship, I've just avoided the camera, it's okay. So we do receive a lot of communication from the police, from the community, from retail and business associations. So not only just members of the public on their own, but obviously we've seen today schools and pupils as well. We will generally undertake some surveys. We will undertake some observations. And just prioritise on those safety records, speed and traffic volume findings from surveys, and the practicality of dealing with something as well. So some areas may turn out to be a little bit easier to implement than others, so we can get on with those while we're busy planning the next one.
So just to tease that out a little bit further, is the fact that there's multiple schools, for example, in a particular area taken into consideration to actually prioritise that higher than another area?
Absolutely, yeah. So we would look at the trip generation, and of course schools means there's going to always be that level of trip generation, but we would, through the observation of how people were acting and behaving, what routes people were choosing, we would determine responses through that as well. So in terms of Murphy Road, for instance, where we've got 3 schools, it's chaos. Yes, it's a fairly high priority.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Yeah, just expanding on that, you know, if we're making decisions, obviously in advance, is there flexibility to respond to concerns that are raised with us that seem urgent, like we've had today, within this model?
Absolutely. The intention is that we fund additional local area traffic management schemes. Whether that actually turns out to be 3 each year, or maybe there's one particular one which needs extra attention that took maybe half of that fund. We would probably know a year in advance which areas we were doing, but we could still use some of that money to be responsive.
And would it be fair to say that the concern that was raised with us today regarding Murphy Road and Miani Road is a complex scenario that will take a considerable amount of resource to remedy?
Through you, Worship, yes, absolutely. It's not a simple fix through there. It's been a problem for years, but I would suggest that it's only getting worse somehow. But we will have to put some study and some research into what the solutions are as well. So it's not going to be a particularly straightforward fix, because it's a crammed and very, very intensive used area.
Yeah, and can I just add that I do have a conflict of interest. I live in Miani Road, but I can absolutely endorse the comments of the submitters today and how concerned many people are, including myself, at what's happening in that area.
Yeah, so just to tease that out a little bit further then, recognising that actually there's further issues along Miani Road and then going into Guppy, would a local area traffic safety plan extend to cover that wider area, or would it be more specific to just your Murphy Road, Miani Road intersection and the 3 schools there?
The physical extent will vary on plan to plan. If it was a more residential area, you may actually spread about that far. I would suggest that the Murphy Road one will extend probably up to Gloucester Road and consider some of the connecting roads there. I wouldn't thought you would do Guppy Road at the same time, but certainly we've already got some work undergoing studying the Guppy-Miani intersection. So
oh, good.
Hopefully something positive to report on that quite soon.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. And at the moment, there's some really good work being done with the Taradale Business Association and Residents Association around the Miani Road, Pukitapu Road, and Pukitapu Road environment. So there's some really good work done in that space. But I'm just wondering, traffic management seems to be a large issue that attracts public attention, and from there we get phone calls and emails about it. I just wonder whether there's an opportunity for the traffic management staff to say, take us through a workshop that just explains all of the criteria that they take into consideration, so that we understand the complexity of what they are dealing with, so that perhaps we're in a better position to inform residents, or perhaps we're in a position as a council to look at the priority list and say, well, actually, what in our minds are the priorities for these, the sequence of events around which plans are done when.
That's a very good suggestion, and we'll note that as an action to set up a workshop.
If I may, Your Worship.
Chair, if I can, just to follow up on today's presentation, of course, without any bias, I think the school kids have given us some direction today.
Robin?
Sorry, I mean, we may get accused of Councillor Simpson putting a patsy question up, but we are midway through preparing a short booklet for councillors and the public to understand what process we actually go through to arrive at interventions, and we were going to workshop that with you. So that's
excellent.
Nicely timed, but not a patsy question.
Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, if I'm hearing this properly, there's already some work that's starting in the Taradale area, and I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for Tom Little, our youth councillor, to actually work with the team, specifically with the Murphy Road part of it, because he presented today with the issue as a few of the others did, and it might be, and they all seem to be youth, so maybe it'd be good to have youth contingent working with the team on that one.
Again, through you, Your Worship. Certainly, getting people like Tom involved sounds brilliant. I wasn't here for his presentation, but I've obviously read his submission.
You're in for a treat.
I've had about 6 people recommend that I watch it, so I will. The idea of using, or rather the residents and the users approaching us and then using that to move things along is actually a way more positive way of going about things than us saying, right, we're going to come in and traffic calm your area. So it's a brilliant start, that kind of thing. So we will absolutely work with them and try and get the rest of the community involved in the same way.
Awesome, thank you for that.
Councillor Brown and then Councillor Taylor.
So some of the other questions that we had today were about broadening it out to other schools, and I note that we're about to implement a Safer Streets program near Napier Girls, Napier Central and Sacred Heart, and I suppose I just really liked that process where there was some data collected to start with. We're going to trial it, the schools have all been engaged, and then we'll see where to go from there. Is that a process that we're looking to follow in areas like near the 3 schools that we saw today?
Again, through you, Your Worship, the processes that we've used for the Innovating Streets funded projects, and that's the West Quay project and also the Safe Routes to School, very similar to our normal processes, but probably a lot more public, and we've really enjoyed actually being able to take the communities along, and it's, like I say, it's actually made things a lot easier. So we will take some lessons from those engagements and try and take them forward. We've also obviously got the reduced speed limits coming, hopefully, around schools as well. So there's more engagement to do with the schools and their communities over the next couple of years.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you, Worship. I just would like to make the comment that in the report we hear that these plans are area-wide rather than focused on problematic streets. And so I would just ask that when we look at these plans that we also consider the fact that we're talking about climate change, we're talking about emissions, that we also take great cognizance of the fact of creating active transport options rather than just focusing on motor vehicles. If we can, and I think back to, I think it was Henry Hill School that did a project a couple of years ago where they reduced the number of vehicles going to drop children off at the school by not allowing them within a certain distance into the cul-de-sac, and it reduced the number of vehicles, it made it a safer place. So can I just impress that taking cars to schools is not the only option, and we saw that very graphically during lockdown, the number of parents who were out with their children on bikes travelling around. And if we make the streets safer, then we'll remove those vehicles off the road. And as our presentation today indicated, the kids will use their bikes to get to school or they'll walk. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Robin, for talking us through sort of some of the work behind how you prioritise streets. A couple of quick questions from me. The workshop you're proposing to put together, is there any reason why that couldn't be a public workshop? Because I think there's a lot of public interest in how we undertake this work.
Through Your Worship, it's absolutely fine with us, yeah.
Thank you. And the second question I have is around the visibility of that prioritised list to council. And my apologies if I've missed it, but where would council see or be reported that priority list? Have I missed it? No.
So we've had some recent engagement to try and be way more visible with our forward work programme. We're starting to hopefully use the projects page more on the website, get information out that way. But those prioritised lists and what we're working on and what we're considering would be a really useful thing to have on there. And of course it saves the public from phoning up and questioning when we've actually already got something in train. So we're working with the comms team to improve our game on that a little bit.
And through you, Madam Mayor, it becomes more important to a degree when you're going from 1 to 3, as opposed to when you've got 1 per year, if that makes sense. So being more visible about priorities is more important and easier to do when you're tripling the number of traffic safety management plans you're doing.
And just to follow up on that, Your Worship, to the Chief Executive, would the best way to do that be through the visibility of the annual and long-term plan process, or do you see that coming through and reporting to Council once the work's sort of had a chance to get its foothold?
My view on that is that Council really needs to be extremely agile with and maintain some flexibility in the space with respect to the way that people use roads changes over time. And we certainly have seen that with respect to knock-on effects of some traffic calming that we've done, for example. So I would be suggesting that that is reported to Council and obviously maintaining, a small degree of flexibility in how that is applied.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
On that sort of agility, and this is sort of for more of our traffic budgeting more generally than just these LATPs. We've been asked for a strategy for how we transition into more active transport modes. And so I'm just wondering, do we have flexibility in our budgets to increase and improve things like cycleways and footpaths within the existing transport and roading parking budgets, or do they need to have their own line items if we were to do something like prioritise active transport in the CBD or something like that?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Your Worship. My suggestion is that some of this discussion can be covered in our other topics, particularly with respect to climate change being a factor in a lot of people's submissions. And the reason that I say that is there is a few things at play there, such as the transportation strategy and some of the other submissions with respect to climate change. So if I could kick for touch, if you will, and we'll focus on the traffic safety plans for now, and we bring in some of that kōrero tomorrow.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so just bringing us back to the officer's recommendation to increase the number of local area traffic safety plans completed per year from 1 to 3, noting that council receives a 51% contribution from Waka Kotahi towards these plans.
I'm happy to move, Madam Mayor, if we can also include the fact that we'll conduct a public workshop to explain the traffic management plan process.
Yep, so
I'm happy to second that.
Councillor Mc-
However the wording goes.
Depends on
local area
Yeah.
safety plan.
Yes, that's right. It's fairly optional, isn't it? And responsive.
We'll do your area if we don't do somewhere else. That's what it says, isn't it?
What I know has been done, and a lot of it.
William Street's my regular.
Sorry, Robin, could I just ask you what would be, considering your other work programs and priorities, when would be a reasonable time to commit to undertaking the public meeting, public workshop?
Direct to you, I'm not sure what sort of lead-in time we would need to set up the workshop or where we would be likely to hold it, but in terms of preparation, the work's basically done, so sometime after July when the silly season slows down a little bit.
Yep. Okay. Yes, just say this calendar year, and that gives us a little bit of flexibility to take other workloads into account.
Madam Mayor, would it be possible for that to be in the form of a workshop but also live streamed, and so that it's on a Facebook, it's a permanent record?
I think all of our public workshops or meetings these days are always live streamed, so that would be a given. Yeah. Councillor Tapney.
So it's just a question, probably for Robin again, around timing. So if we do a after July workshop, does it still leave us with enough time and scope to be able to contribute towards any annual plan conversations that may follow? See a nod to my right.
Through the Mayor, I wouldn't know any specifics, wouldn't be part of an annual plan process. It's a part of our operational process. We've actually noted in the consultation document what the where that likely work was going to be undertaken, but it's part of the operational program from my perspective.
Could I just add to that, please? Excuse me, Madam Mayor. From the booklet, it said we'll be undertaking from 1 per year to 3 per year from 2022-23. So it wouldn't be until next year that we start doing the 3.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue. Okay, so we have a mover and seconder. I got that. Thank you, Councillor McGrath. So unless anyone would like to speak to the motion, I'll put that. So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. And I don't think we'll continue with funding requests tonight. We will adjourn and leave that until tomorrow. Thank you, staff and councillors, for all your...
What time tomorrow?
I think it's 9 o'clock, isn't it? That's been signified. Yeah, 9 o'clock.
Signified.